Transform your business from the inside out. This episode features marketing expert Wayne Mullins, who will challenge your perceptions of what it takes to make a marketing successful and dive deep into the heart of your business culture and discover how your company culture may be subtly undermining your marketing efforts and growth, and practical steps to align your culture and your marketing strategies, and the importance of personal engagement with your prospects and customers. Wayne brings years of expertise in crafting marketing strategies that are not just effective, but sustainable by focusing on your business's core, your culture. Wayne's insights to connect your marketing efforts. Wade is awesome. Let's tune in.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where you will discover how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Paul Guyon, the mastermind behind the Lead Machine, introduces you to trailblazers who inspire you to implement life-changing solutions and systems you can model to nurture your leads and get your offers seen by your ideal clients who will invest in themselves and you. Be sure you visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, tune in and get ready to transform your vision into reality.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyon, your host, lead machine coach, and the founder of the Lead Machine Mastermind Group and Marketing Agency. And I'm dedicated to helping you tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. So whether you're just starting out or you want to take your business to the next level, let's get this conversation started and turn your dreams into reality. Wayne is a husband, a father of four, an entrepreneur, the founder of Ugly Mug Marketing, the creator of Freelance Accelerator, and the author of Full Circle Marketing. He's an out-of-the-box, against-the-grain thinker, which I like, and he's unconventional thinking has more than paid off for his clients and for his company. He leads from the heart and is passionate and unapologetic about it. As founder and CEO of Ugly Mug Marketing, one of the most unique and successful marketing agencies in the world, he has personally trained more than 20,000 marketers, launched New York Times bestsellers, and helped a client grow from 20 million to more than 600 million in less than 5 years. Wow, that's impressive. Wayne, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'm excited for our chat today and dive into culture and marketing and all the things in between.
Yeah, you know what I like about your bio is the first thing you said was that you're a husband, father of four, and then you're an entrepreneur. Can you elaborate a little bit about why that's important to you?
You know, Paul, I think at the end of the day, at the end of our lives, really, what matters most are relationships. And what matters most in our relationships are typically our family. And so for me, success means what does my relationships at home look like? My kids are still, most of them are in the teenage years. They will be departing shortly, going on their way, becoming adults and making their way in this life. And, I want to be a husband. I want to be a father so that once my kids are gone, that they want to come back home. They want to spend time with us, as a family. And so to me, that is really what success is about. We all quote unquote know that what we do 8 to 5, yes, we can find meaning. We can find purpose. We can help other people through our vocation. But I think so often it's easy to lose sight of, at the end of the day, what matters truly most to us in our lives.
Yeah, and I think that's really telling about why we're talking about culture, and you're leading from the heart, and how building those core values into your company is so important. So many times you find companies, especially as they grow, maybe past 50 employees or 20 or 30, or it depends on the company, but they lose that sense of direction. They lose that sense of value. And so, which brings me to my first question, I guess, is I think we're talking about growth here and profitability, is how do you first of all establish that that heart-centeredness in your culture, in your company?
Yeah, I think, Paul, as cliche as this answer is going to sound, it starts with those things that we all hear and we all know about as entrepreneurs. Those things that we put on the back burner that we say one day we're going to get to these things. And so, really, culture begins with a few things, a few core ingredients. Number one, it begins with the vision. In other words, what is it that we're actually trying to create? What are we trying to build here? What are we trying to accomplish? Which ties into the mission, right? So, why do we exist? Why are we getting up every morning? Why are we showing up at the office? Why are we logging on to our computers? Why do we exist? And then finally, the core values. Like, what are the things that are going to guide our day to day decisions? And are those crystal clear? I don't know about for you or for the listeners, but for years, I knew about these things, right? I knew about having a vision, having a mission, having values. And I had some of those things, but they weren't actually a reality for us. In other words, they were a sentence or two jotted down on a piece of paper or on a file on a computer, and they were tucked away and forgotten about. And those were the things that one day, when time permits, when money permits, when all of these other things fall into line, we're going to get to those things. And I learned the hard way, the very hard way. After 7 years, I learned that until we are intentional about building a great high performance culture, then we are unintentionally allowing a mediocre and weak culture to exist.
Ah. And so that started in that 7 years that you talk about. So what was it that started showing up that clued you into that? Boy, I better fix this now instead of later.
Yeah, so there was actually a critical pivot moment in my journey, I guess you could say,
Mm.
that led me to that realization. But what was happening before that was I was showing up every day. I was working 7 days a week. I was working, 70, 80 plus hours a week, trying to hold this thing together, trying to make this thing called Ugly Mug Marketing work. And my employees, my team, I viewed them as lazy, as entitled, as people who would do the bare minimum just to get by. Yeah, nice people, polite people, friendly people, people I liked as people, but the work ethic was anemic. The service that we were giving to our clients, I was constantly having to micromanage, having to jump in. I couldn't take a vacation. And when I did take a vacation, my phone was constantly ringing. I was constantly having to jump in, solve problems, all of those things. So, for me, that was the reality for those 7 years. The reality was somehow by bad luck, by happenstance, whatever you want to call it, I was dealt these cards where I had a team who wasn't passionate, a team who didn't want to work. I had difficult clients. I had all of the things that make for a miserable existence as an entrepreneur. And up until that kind of moment of pivot in my journey and in my path on this entrepreneur journey, that was the reality. And then what I realized at that point was that didn't have to be my reality anymore. That reality was a choice. That reality was a decision that I was making. And the true change began when I realized that it was the person in the mirror looking back at me every morning. He was the culprit. He was the one that was tolerating. He was the one that was creating an environment, a culture that would permeate and allow those types of behaviors from clients and from our team.
Yeah, and I think that not taking action and saying, I'll just do it later, that's an action. Inaction is action. And so you were working in the business and you were you have all these plates spinning and you didn't have time to do it. And so what was the thing the pivotal moment? What did you do to fix that? And did you keep your people or did you fire everybody or did you fire yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. The pivotal moment for me happened to be a entrepreneur lunch mastermind meeting. So it was a meeting with about 20 other entrepreneurs, very successful people in business. And we show up for this meeting and I'd happened to invite a friend that day who owned a business and he was considering selling his company. So he was trying to decide, do I sell it? Do I keep growing it and then sell it later for, higher valuation? And I was attempting to convince him to keep the business, to go a few more years. It would be worth, a multiple of what he was going to get in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So we show up for the luncheon. And as luck would have it that day, the conversation that day was around your team and the employees on your team. And so the opening activity was, we're going to go around the room, introduce yourself, the name of your company, and how many employees work for you. And so we start going around the room, and it gets to the point where it's going to be the guy that everyone knows. So everyone in the room knows this guy, very successful. He's got the private plane. He's got 700 employees, phenomenally successful. So it gets to him. He states his name. He states the business. And he says, in terms of the number of employees I have working for me, well, it's roughly half of them.
Right.
And so, he makes the joke, everyone laughs. And then for the next hour and a half, everyone in the room spent the entire time complaining about their team, complaining about how people don't want to work. They can't be trusted, the drama, all this stuff. And so I left that day. My friend calls me afterwards and says, look, that meeting made the decision for me. If that's what I have to look forward to, I'm getting out now. I'm selling the business now. And for me, that was kind of like the turning point. That was the thing that caused me to just stop in my tracks and say, hey, this is exactly what I have. I have, quote unquote, the team that doesn't want to work, the team that wants to do as little as possible, the team that always has some form of drama around them.
Yeah.
And I said, in that moment, this is a choice. This is a choice for me. I'm choosing to tolerate this behavior. I'm choosing to allow this behavior. And I've created the culture that normalizes this behavior. And the true change didn't start by firing a team. Because as a matter of fact, the team actually didn't change. What changed was me. What changed was firing myself, my excuses, and what I tolerated from myself as a leader.
Yeah, it's funny. Your attitude changed towards your team, and therefore your team's attitude changed towards you, which is often the case in any relationship. And that's what we're talking about here, is a relationship. So what did you do next? How did you fire yourself, and how did you pull yourself out of this, the dregs of mediocrity?
The very first step, Paul, was this, and it was a very humbling experience, but it was an apology. It was an apology, first of all, to myself for allowing myself to get to this situation and saying, you know what? I can't go back and change the past. I can't go back and undo the 7 years that I've spent here. So I had to apologize to myself and forgive myself for that. But then secondly, I had to go to the team and apologize publicly to the team for creating the culture that I'd allowed. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, it was my responsibility. So I began with an apology. And it was at that point that I said, you know, we're going to return to what matters most. I have to ensure that as a team, we understand where we're going, why it matters, what's expected of each person on the team, and how will their performance actually be judged in relation to the journey that we're going on. So it was really about getting clarity around those things. Now, from those things, there's a lot of ancillary things that took place and that were required to do that. But that was the turning point. That was the point of transition.
And how did your team respond to that? Were they surprised? Did they realize that they had a mediocre culture, or that had they even thought of that, or did they go, yeah, we get it?
Yeah. So the team, I think, if I'm being completely transparent and honest, I think they were skeptical, not because of the culture that existed, but because this is another quote unquote initiative that we're going to roll out here. You know, I am your quote unquote traditional entrepreneur with a new idea every other second, like a new thing we could do, we should do, we ought to consider. And so for me, I knew that was what they were going to interpret this as. Like, this is just another initiative. Give it 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and then Wayne will be on to the next initiative, the next big idea that we're going to pursue.
And we can go back to where we're doing it.
Yeah. We can go back to the level of comfort. And so for me, that's why I say it goes back to the person in the mirror, because I had to be willing to confront all of my insecurities, to be willing to confront all of my personal preferences, right, of jumping from thing to thing, to sit in that change and to be dedicated and disciplined to follow that through.
And that is a humbling experience. And so how long did it take to turn around? Now, was your marketing doing well at that point, or because we were talking about the impact of culture on marketing, what was going on there?
Yeah. So from a business perspective, our business has been very fortunate that every single year since we began 15 plus years ago now, we've always had an up year. The up has varied in terms of size, right? Some years it's a small increase, other years it's a significant increase, but we've always moved in an upward direction in terms of growth and revenue. So the issue wasn't with growth or revenue for us. The issue was that the more we were growing, the less freedom I had and the less money I was earning per hour, right? Because my hours kept increasing, but my hours were increasing at a rate greater than my pay that I was getting. So that was the reality.
Wow. And that's a tough reality there. What about um, some steps that people can take? Maybe they don't have 700 employees. They haven't been in business for 15 years. What if they're just starting out and they're looking to hire maybe a VA or their first employee? What are some things that an entrepreneur should start when they're just from the get go?
Mhm. Yeah, I love this question. I think one of the very first places you need to start is auditing your own time. So I think sometimes when we're entrepreneurs, we assume that we know where our time is going. We assume that we know how our time is being spent and utilized. So one of the exercises that I love to do once a quarter, and I'm going to admit up front, Paul, this is an extremely painful exercise to do.
Mhm.
Simple to do, but painful to do. But once a quarter, what I love to do is for a solid week is I track my time in 15-minute increments. So when I walk in the door at work, 15 minutes, I set a timer. What did I do the last 15 minutes? What did I so all day long, every 15 minutes, I'm documenting what I was doing the last 15 minutes. And then what I do is at the end of the day, I take those things and I break them into categories. In other words, was this finance? Was it marketing? Was it HR? Was it, client work? Was it whatever those categories may be? And then the next piece, and this is the important piece, is I determine if that is a recurring task or a trigger task. So the distinction between those two things are this. A recurring task is something that is going to recur. In other words, it's going to come back up at some frequency, whether that's multiple times a day, whether that's, a few times a week, once a month, whatever it may be. Is it
Yeah.
recurring? The other type of task or thing that you could work on would be a trigger. And so a trigger would be all of a sudden a customer writes in and complains about something unexpected, right? And so
Yeah.
that was something that was triggered by an external circumstance that hopefully doesn't occur on a regular basis,
Yeah.
but there's little control I have over that trigger task. In other words, I don't know when that's going to occur.
Mhm.
So then at the end of the week, what I love to do is I break everything down based on the recurring task and I separate the trigger task because I really can't control those necessarily right now.
Yeah.
And then what I'm trying to figure out is of all these recurring tasks and the categories that they fall under, which of those things can I easily hand off to someone else to do? And the mistake I see so many entrepreneurs making is they just begin looking for things to hand off without understanding the frequency that these things need to reoccur. So, for example, if I wanted to delegate my inbox, I would first need to say, how often does someone need to actually check my inbox? Is it 20 times a day? Is it 2 times a day? Is it every other day? I need to establish that because what happens is when we assign things to other people, we often assign things with not explicit expectations. In other words, they're implicit expectations. They're implied things that we assume they already know. And so this exercise of inventorying our time, documenting our time, creates for us a proven, documented, actual analysis of how often these things need to occur. And it helps us get clarity around what are the explicit expectations for each of these things that I'm handing off.
Yeah, that would take a lot of discipline to do, especially every 15 minutes. But how long would you do such an exercise for? Did you say for a quarter or
I do
for
it once a quarter for a week.
once a quarter for a week?
Yep.
Wow, that I could see. I'm thinking about. You're right. It's painful. I'm thinking about my time and what I do, and I'm going, oh my gosh. If I did that, I would find a lot of things that I shouldn't be doing that I could either eliminate or hand off to someone
Yep.
or not do.
Yeah. It's what's so interesting about that exercise, Paul, is um, think about it. If we were to switch that idea to financials, the way that most of us approach our time would be the equivalent of saying, we have money flowing into our business, we have expenses going out, but we're never going to actually stop and take inventory and figure out how much is coming in, how much is going out, and where's it going, right?
Yeah.
But that is the way we operate with our most precious resource that we have, which is our time.
Right.
We approach it blindly. We approach it just assuming that all hours are created equal, that all tasks are created equal. And in doing so, we end up wasting so much time solving problems, jumping into things that are urgent, but not truly important.
Yeah. And that's what I call that working kind of in the sweet spot. Is you need to be working on the things that are super important and that are moving the needle for you. And the other things is you either, like I said, either eliminate them or move them to someone else who can handle them, or and maybe they'll handle it a lot better than you do.
Mm.
And getting clear on what that will set you up. Doing that audit would set you up for being able to train someone to do what you need to have done.
Yep.
So that's an awesome exercise. Now, have you done any helped other companies with this idea? And I know you've got some success with your company. How about other companies that you've worked with this idea?
Yeah. So I do occasionally. I mean, that's not what we do, right? We're a
Yeah.
marketing agency, but we often have clients who come to us and they quote unquote have a marketing problem. And what we've discovered over time is that a marketing problem, quote unquote, is often a symptom of something deeper. There's often something else taking place that's the true root cause of the issues that they're experiencing. And so, in diving into what are those things, sometimes we'll discover that culture is a major problem for the organization. And when we jump into that, what we discover is that, we often are trained as entrepreneurs to think about marketing as, television, radio, social media, all of these pieces and components, which are part of marketing, but really those are all advertising components, right? They're places that we can broadcast our message to the world.
Yeah.
But the
Channels.
reality is, marketing is the way you answer your phone. Marketing is how clean your front door is if people are coming into your business. Marketing is there trash all over your parking lot? Marketing is how clean is your bathroom? Marketing is how long did it take me to get my food? All of these things are marketing because at the end of the day, the most effective and efficient marketing that we can have are creating evangelists for our products, our services, and for our brand. And all of these little things that we tend to neglect are sending marketing signals to those people. In other words, we're not going to go tell our friends about a mediocre experience at a restaurant, but a restaurant that does things a little bit different, that goes a little above and beyond, things that are truly remarkable. And these things don't have to be grand. They don't have to be, some big budget blown out the door type of thing. These can be little things that make huge differences. So that is where we often have to start is, and to your question, to your point is, your team, are they actually looking people in the eye? Are they smiling? Are they greeting people when they come in the door? All of that is marketing. And all of those things are symptomatic of the underlying culture that exists.
Yeah, and an example of that is there's a restaurant that we like to come to. There's three things that we like to do when we come here. And all of them revolve around food. And when we come up north to Harbor Springs, Michigan, number one, we want to go to the paper station because they have the best Wagyu hamburger that you ever had. And I even took a picture of it today so I could share it with my friends. And they accommodate you. They seat you right away. You have to make a reservation because they're always busy. They have the best food. They have great service, and it's not super expensive. And their chocolate cake, flourless cake is amazing. And it's just a great experience. So every time we come here, we have to make at least one of our dinners is going to be there. And the other one is Tom's Mom's Cookie. Go to Tom's Mom's Cookie online in Harbor Springs, Michigan, and you have the best chocolate chip cookie you've ever had. Well, this time they didn't have chocolate. They didn't have the right chocolate. For some reason, the supply chain or whatever, they didn't have the chocolate didn't show up. So we went there anyway, and there was a sign that told us that. And so we got the oatmeal raisin and the butterscotch oatmeal cookie, the peanut butter cookie, and the cinnamon sugar cookie, and we were satisfied. And we'll keep coming back, not because they didn't have chocolate. It's because they're a great company and they show up that way. They're pleasant, and it's a small little thing, small little company. And but everyone knows about Tom's Mom's Cookies in Michigan for sure. So those are just some examples of that. So
Yeah. And what's amazing about that, Paul, is, first of all, you said you took a picture to share with your friends.
yeah,
You're now talking about it to all the people who are going to listen to this podcast.
evangelists. Yeah,
Yeah. And what did that actually cost them, right? They didn't have to run an ad on Facebook to get you to say those things. They didn't have to run, a radio spot to get you to say these wonderful things. The things you're talking about are all symptomatic of the underlying culture that exists. Quality food, great service, all of those things are marketing. And yet we live in a world and environment where we are conditioned to not view those things as marketing, right? We're conditioned from advertisers, from people telling us and trying to convince us we can reach thousands of people. We can, make this big impact, whatever it may be, to spend money on these platforms. When I would argue that the best marketing dollars you will ever spend are on improving your customer experience.
yeah, and you mentioned this in your bio as we were introducing the topic, was the personal engagement with your prospects and your clients, and how does that look, and how does that scale? How can you possibly scale that if you have this personal involvement with them?
Yeah, again, not to sound overly cliche here, but again, it does start with the culture. What do you expect? What type of culture are you creating in your company? Is it one where we view people as a transaction, or is it one where we view each person as a potential evangelist?
Mm.
Whether that's an evangelist for good, talking about how amazing we are, or an evangelist for bad, who talks about the terrible service or the mediocre food that we had. And I think the way we have to think about this is, if you are spending any money on marketing, right? If you have any budget for marketing, ask yourself this simple question: how much of my budget is going to attracting new customers into my door? And how much of my budget is actually going to taking my existing customers or clients and converting them into evangelists for my brand? And what I would say is, majority of entrepreneurs are spending all of their money, their marketing dollars, attracting new people. And we all know the stats. The stats say that it is 7 times easier to sell to someone who's already bought from you in the past. We all know the stats that talk about how word of mouth customers, referral customers, are always the best customers that you're going to get into your business, into your door.
Mhm.
And yet we seem to ignore that when it comes to actually how we spend our money. And so I would say the litmus test is, look at your marketing budget. What percent is going to attracting new people versus what percent is going to actually converting existing customers into evangelists for you?
Right. And what would a quote unquote campaign like that look? How would you say, I want to intentionally create evangelists? How am I going to go do that? What are the steps that I would do to make that happen?
Step
I don't
number
think
one,
people know. I don't think people know what to do. You
yeah,
know, they might have one of the companies that I work with has a reminder department, a reorder department. They remind people 6, 8 months or 6 weeks, 10 weeks ahead of time because of the time it takes to build their product. So they remind them, and there's an annual event that happens. So that they spend their time there. So they've spent some money in their budget to sustain a marketing or a reorder department. But how would you do that? How would you do that?
the first place we love to start with clients is this: we have to get clear about, what does a reasonable customer or client have the right to expect at every point of interaction with us. And so we call it the customer expectation litmus test. And so if we think about, it varies from business to business, but let's just say that your business exists where maybe it's the restaurant you mentioned where you have to call and make a reservation. So the first point of contact that you're going to have with that business is you pick up the phone and call to make the reservation. So the question is, what does a reasonable customer have the right to expect when they call us? Do we answer the phone in one ring? Do we answer it in two? Do we answer it in 10? Does it go to voicemail? Does it go to a prompt where you press 1 for this, press 2 for this? Is it a real human being that answers the phone? What does a reasonable customer have the right to expect? And so we write that down. Our customers expect us to answer the phone with a real human being within 5 rings. So then we say, okay, if we're going to be truly remarkable, we have to be better than 5 rings. So maybe that is 2 rings. So we answer the phone in less than 5 rings to be remarkable. Our goal is 2 rings. Now, we have to also define the other side of that. When we answer the phone in 6 or more rings, we are no longer even meeting client expectations or customer expectations. We are now in the realm of dissatisfying customers even before they get to our business. And we probably are losing some because we're not answering quickly. We then move down to the next thing. So you show up to go to the restaurant, you pull into the parking lot. Do they expect the parking lot to be clean? Do they expect to have to park 3 blocks away and walk? What do they expect? How can we engineer things along the way that make that truly remarkable for them? When they get to the door, do they expect to have to wait in the lobby? Do they have to wait in the waiting room? Do they have to, what are their expectations there? How long does it take to get to your table, right? How long does it take before your server comes to your table? How long does it take to get your food once you order? So by defining all of these things and getting crystal clear, we now have a litmus test that we can take and we can hand to somebody and say, look, the next time the phone rings, I want you to walk somebody through this whole process. So, Paul, you call and I'm sitting here judging, evaluating. How many rings did it take before we answered Paul's call? Great, we answered in 3. That's one step in exceeding those expectations. Number 2, we know when your reservation is, so we know roughly when you're going to show up. So we can see it. Did we get your table in less than the time that we promise, internally?
Yeah.
So again, it starts with getting clear on those expectations, which again, super easy to do, right? I mean, you literally go down the list of all those points of interaction, but it requires discipline because we're so busy trying to pursue all these latest and greatest marketing things. It takes discipline to do those things. The next step is this. We have to give our team permission, time, and resources to exceed expectations. So for us, what that looks like is this. We allocate 1% of our revenue to delivering remarkable experiences to our clients. So if someone on our team is managing, let's just say they have 10 clients that they're working with every month. And let's just say for simple math, that those 10 clients pay us $1,000 a month each. So that's $10,000. Well, that person, whoever that person is that's working with those clients, now has a budget every single month of $100. They can choose to spend all $100 however they want. They can spend it all 100 on one client because maybe that client's got a big anniversary or a big birthday coming up. Or they can spend $10 on each client every month and that money compounds. So that money builds. Maybe they want to build that money up for 2, 3, 4, 5 months and then do something really amazing for all of their clients. We give them the freedom to do those things. And it starts with the relationship with those clients, getting to know them, getting to know their families, getting to know their pets, getting to know all these pieces and components, and then looking for ways to leverage those dollars to create remarkable experiences.
Yeah, I didn't expect that answer, but improving the customer experience certainly is a great place to start. Is there any way that in these digital age that you can also, what's the next step here with advertising or touches or direct mail or whatever?
Yeah, I think in terms of delivering remarkable experiences, if you were to even just pull your existing customers and do things that are remarkable just for them.
Mm-hmm.
So when we typically think about marketing or advertising, we think about going out there and reaching new people. But what if we instead took that money and said, look, we're going to do a private event for all of our customers. So we email all of those customers on our list and say, hey, look, Paul, thank you so much for coming up to our restaurant every single year, every single spring, every single summer, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
We're going to be hosting a customer only private VIP event on this day. And as one of our loyal customers who loves our burgers, whatever the
Yeah.
product is, right?
Yeah.
We want to personally invite you and your family to attend this. It's free of charge.
Wow.
So again, mentally, we have to shift our thinking away from always trying to get new people into the top of the funnel. And we have to begin thinking, how do I evangelize Paul to go out, tell other people about us? What are some things that I can do to do that? And it's not as complex. Maybe, it depends on the industry, depends on the business. Maybe if you're producing clothing apparel, maybe you take your entire customer list and you produce something that you can mass send to all of them just as a way of saying thank you. Hey, we want to send you this thing, this t-shirt, this whatever, just as our way of saying thank you. It's not for sale anywhere else. It's only for our loyal customers like you. Hope you have an amazing weekend. Thanks so much, Paul. Little things like that
Yeah.
go a long way.
Wow, I can see that. And you're right. We do as want to get new blood into our fold. And a lot of the clients that I work with, that's where their focus is. But fixing the customer experience seems like would be the easiest thing to do.
Yeah. It's not as sexy though, right? It's not
No,
as sexy
it's not.
as getting more people into the funnel, getting more people to inquire about our products or our services. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for both sides of this equation, right? You have to also be marketing, you have to be filling the funnel. But at the same time, we need to start giving more credence to turning existing customers and clients into evangelists and being intentional in our efforts to do that. So, handwritten birthday cards that go out to our clients every single year, anniversary cards for people who we build websites for. In other words, it's your website's anniversary.
Yeah.
Private events for our customers, for our clients. All of those little things go a long way to build those evangelists.
I get it. I love it. One other question before we wrap up here, Wayne, was hiring teams. What do you do when you want to find that this person into your team because you're growing? You need more people. How do you select the right people for your culture?
Yeah. So for us, we have a fairly long and extensive hiring process.
Mhm.
If I was going to leave with one kind of, maybe it's cliche piece of advice about hiring, it'd be this: hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
And so for us to be a part of our team, typically you're going to go through 3 to 6 months of a process just to get a job offer from us. And it's not because we don't need people. It's not because, we aren't growing. It's not because of any of those things. It's because we are so intentional about bringing people into our company who fit our culture. And what I would say is this, that the smaller your organization is, the more important each and every hire is. So if you've got 10 employees and you're hiring your 11th, that person is 1/11th
Yeah.
of your culture. If you're just starting out and you've got 1 or 2 employees and you're hiring another one, that person makes up a third, a fourth of your culture. So those early hires are so, so critical. So for us, the process is slow. And that's intentional. We are trying to make sure of culture fit first. The other thing that I would say where so many people mess up is we are all biased in the way that we interview. We are trying to use logic by asking the right questions, kind of drilling into their work history and all of those things. But then there's this whole emotional side that's taking place that sometimes we're not even aware of. We're trying to trust our gut often in the hiring process. And so one of the things that we look for is we look for qualifying questions around each of our core values. So an example may be for us, one of our core values is we create remarkable experiences. So the question in the interview process may be something along the lines of, so Paul, tell me about a time when you created a remarkable experience for someone else. And so what we're looking for is, did they think out of the box? Did they actually truly create a remarkable experience? What are other evidences in their career path where they've gone and deviated from the norm to do things that are truly remarkable? And then the final piece of that, so the culture piece, and we could dive into lots of ways we try to
Right.
uncover that. But the
Yeah.
other piece that I think so many people miss out on is they never actually put the people, quote unquote, to the test in actually what they're going to be doing. So in other words, if you're hiring a graphic designer, and we see this all the time, what happens is, the graphic designer will submit their portfolio. They'll come in and do all the interviews. You'll look at portfolio and say, wow, these are amazing. These are great. But we never actually pull them in and say, look, we're going to have you come in for a half day. It's a half day session, and we're going to give you some real world examples that you're going to execute on.
Yeah.
And so we need to create real world scenarios, because when we look at a portfolio, we don't know if that designer had 2 weeks to create that one poster to make it look perfect. But when we bring them in and we say, okay, the client just called, we're creating the scenario, the client just called, they have an event that's coming up tomorrow,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Somebody's coming in from corporate and they have to put on this event tomorrow. You've got 30 minutes to design a poster. Let's see what you can do. So again, you want to create real world scenarios and have them execute based on their skills, their abilities, specifically around the job that you're hiring them to do.
Right. I love that. And one of my clients does do that. They bring people in. They're in graphics designers is one of their one of the teams that they build. And I have to agree with you. Companies tend to hire faster and fire slower, and that hurts you. Firing slower really hurts your culture, I think, especially if someone's underperforming or like they don't show up on time. Well, if they're in the phone tree, then other people have to step up to cover them when they can't show up to work. And it's crazy. People don't want to show up for work. Come on, what's up with that? But yeah, companies tend to fire a lot slower than they should because of that erosion of the morale of the company.
Yeah.
So, well, hey Wayne, this has been great. I love the direction this has gone. I'm super important, or I feel that culture is very, very important with companies, and I've had a lot of experiences where the company went astray, and even though there was warning signs everywhere, they went astray, and then it just wasn't a great place to work, and they lost clients and vendors, and that happened. So I'm glad that you're focused on this. So as we wrap up with your final words, what are 3 things that our listeners and viewers can do to put these ideas into action?
Sure. I think, the very first step is that we have to realize as entrepreneurs and leaders that everything begins and ends with the person in the mirror each morning. And that until we learn to lead ourselves well, we have really no hope of leading others well. So, in other words, why should I expect things differently from other people that I don't expect for myself? So that's number one,
Yeah.
being honest with ourselves and the person in the mirror. Number two, what I would say is this, that um, specifically be intentional about your culture, because if you are unintentional about your culture and building a strong culture in your workplace, then what's happening is you're unintentionally allowing a weak and anemic culture. And as Peter Drucker so famously said years ago, that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
So you can have the best strategy in the world, but if someone's got a better culture than you, they're going to dominate every single time because they can adapt and adjust. So number one, be honest with the person looking back at you in the mirror. Number two is be intentional about that culture. And then the third piece that I would say is this, that, and this is a tough one for me as an entrepreneur, is that consistency creates miracles. Consistency creates miracles. And I love the next new idea. We talked about that a little bit earlier. I
Yeah.
love the magic bullet, the next big thing that's coming along. But learning to be consistent creates an environment. It creates a culture of trust amongst the team. It creates a culture where people can execute. You give them the time and the ability to execute on the ideas and the initiatives before jumping to the next thing. And so for me, it's learning to temper my desire for the next big thing and to stick with the plan, to be consistent in the plan, and to support my team as they execute that plan before just dumping a million other wonderful ideas on them. So those would be my 3 key takeaways.
Awesome. Yeah. And as we do wrap up, how can people get in touch with you, and with your philosophies and also with Ugly Mug Marketing?
Sure. The simplest place for Ugly Mug is our website, uglymugmarketing.com. All of our email addresses, social media, all of that stuff in one spot. And if you're interested in more kind of culture and leadership stuff, I share that personally on my Instagram page often, and that is at Fire Yourself.
I love that. Wow. Well, thanks so much. And remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyon, your host, and Wayne Mullins. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyon, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.